Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sixer Sense podcast. I'm your host Lucas with Chris here. Chris, game 6 did not go the way that we thought it was going to go, huh?
Yeah, no, it did not. Indy won rather convincingly, so we have that game 7 that we predicted a few episodes ago.
And I'm not going to say a team's going to win one way or the other. I honestly think it's a coin flip.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Indiana has a certain team of destiny feeling to them. I think logically OKC is the pick.
But you
But I'm
can't.
sure we can discuss this more at the end of the podcast. There's a lot to get into there.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of Sixer stuff, and we're going to start with, of course, the man of already infinite amount of Sixers drama, despite not even being drafted by them, which is Ace Bailey.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it kind of feels like he's made for Philly in a certain sense. Ace Bailey, we talked about on the last episode, this upcoming workout he had scheduled for Friday this week. Private dinner with Philly. Apparently all the hotel reservations were made, the dinner, the breakfast reservations. Everything was set for him to come to Philly and work out individually for the first time. He hasn't done that with a single team yet in this pre-draft cycle, Lucas. But then he canceled. So it seems like Ace Bailey will not work out for anyone. Which is something of a bold strategy, one we don't really see from guys who aren't. Obviously Cooper Flag has met with Dallas and worked out with Dallas and Dallas alone because he's going to Dallas as the number one pick.
He's the only American-based prospect that has not visited a team yet.
Yeah, normally a guy who isn't locked and loaded at a certain place is going to work out with teams, multiple teams. And even the guys who do get a promise at least work out with that team generally. Bailey has not done that. Only a few other guys, like you said, who aren't American, like Noah Asangwe and Ben Saraf, who are still playing in the playoffs overseas, haven't worked out with teams. So it's a sort of unique situation, Lucas. What was your response, or how did you feel when the news broke that Bailey had canceled his workout?
Well, I'll tell you this, Chris. If I had a sink, I would have washed my hands. I'm done with Ace Bailey. It's too much drama. Look, I listened to Locked On Sixers with Keith Pompey, friend of the podcast, and multiple other people talking about him. And my understanding is this: the guy wants to be a star. He wants to be a star right away, and he wants to be the guy going in. Now, you could argue whether or not the Sixers have the opportunity to give that to him based off of, the health of Embiid and Paul George, right? You could make that argument. Fair, whatever, fair or unfair. I think it's fair to say that Maxi's the guy here. So if his camp doesn't want him to come here, then yeah, just tell us that. Don't be rude about it. I mean, and I get that Daryl Morey's the type of guy that would draft him anyway. So maybe you need to show off some red flags. But look, I think based off of that, hearing that, it makes me think that he wants to go to a team like Washington, Utah, maybe Charlotte or Brooklyn, right? Especially Washington and Brooklyn. I think those are the teams that you would, if you're a prospect, you get to go on there. You pretty much get to do whatever you want right away, right? But I will say this could be hurting his bag. If he does drop to that, the third pick makes a lot more money than the 6th or the 7th or the 8th overall pick, right? So I think that's something to keep in mind here. And, my understanding, and I think Keith said this too, I could be wrong on this, of who said this, but, Ace Bailey's agent is the dad of a former AAU teammate of his. And basically, they want to keep him. They want him to play somewhere between either Atlanta to Newark, New Jersey, or New York, basically. So, if that's the case, I mean, Philly does fit in that range. But like I said, if you're more concerned about being the guy and putting up numbers right away, then don't come to the Sixers. It's not the right pick. Like, look, if you're more concerned about that than just getting to the NBA and not making a fuss about it and give it, look. If you're good enough, you're going to get the shots on this team. Look, there aren't that many elite offensive options, at the moment, at least that are, that aren't 6'3" or below, right? In terms of height, so you're going to get options if you come here. But if you're more concerned about that, then honestly, I don't want you in Philly. Let's go VJ Edgecombe. I'm all for it. Let's go. Full blast now. Wash my hands of it.
Yeah. I think all that's fair. So his agent is Omar Cooper, who's the dad of Sharif Cooper, former Hawk.
Oh gosh, I remember Sharif. He never
Yeah,
made it to the league. He was a G leaguer the whole time.
yeah. Well,
I liked him
he
as a
was.
prospect, but he just never made it.
Me too. Yeah, Auburn guy, played at McEachern in near Atlanta, which is where Ace played. I marched several marching band competitions at McEachern back in the day. It's a very nice school. Their
Ayo.
stadium is basically like a college stadium. It's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is like a pretty clear case of Ace just getting bad advice from his agents. I don't really want to blame him. I think this is probably
I
more of
mean,
the
there's
agent.
common sense to this, though, right? There's common sense to this. Like, come on now.
Sure,
Like,
but
you
I
have to
mean,
have a level of accountability if you're listening to your agents about this. And clearly, your
sure,
agent was no.
but
I'm not completely absolving him, even if this is mostly the agent.
I'm going to read you one agent's quote from that James Barlow just reported for NBA Big Board. This is a direct quote from an anonymous agent. Quote, Daryl Morey doesn't care about all that noise. If he wants Ace, then that's exactly who he's going to take, which I think sounds just about right.
Yeah,
I
that
think,
does sound about right. Now, me personally as a fan, I would be mad if Maury did. But at this
okay, so
point,
you're just
Maurice is
out
going to do what he's
completely.
going to do.
You don't want any part of Ace Bailey.
I think that right now it's about me culture. This feels exactly like Ben Simmons. It does. Because Ben Simmons didn't care about LSU. He didn't try at LSU. And once Ben Simmons got his bag, you could say it's injury. Maybe it is. But like Ben Simmons has not been doing basketball the same way he used to. Not even
Yeah,
close to the relative level.
I mean, I think Ben got hurt. In all fairness, I think that's a different
But
situation.
like
But
he's back now and he's not hurt. And he's still playing like he's hurt.
I think he's lost a step or two. I don't think he's the same physically as he used to be.
This isn't a Ben
But
Simmons podcast. We could argue
yeah,
about that for like an hour and a half.
look, Ace played pretty hard at Rutgers. I don't think it was an effort, really a
But
skill
I'm
issue.
not
But
saying that it's not an effort thing. I think it's I care about my bag. Let me get my bag and be the star versus winning. And the
I think that's
Sixers
fair.
and the
I
Sixers
think
need a player that cares about winning right now. He's caring about his brand, and better or worse, that's his choice. That's fine. Some people come to the NBA, they don't care about winning, they care about their brand and what the NBA can do for them. And that's fine. We've seen plenty of stars like that tag on to championship teams when they only have one foot into retirement already.
yeah, I think that's generally fair. I don't think it is too crazy to read between the lines and say that like Washington or Brooklyn are probably his preferred destinations. From the same report from James Barlow, he said that several players and agents have told him that like Brooklyn is their preferred landing spot. Obviously, it's a big market and a pretty blank slate, so you can go there and get minutes and shots right away.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like the kind of thing Ace would want. Played at Rutgers, which isn't that far from New York. He's throwing out for the first pitch for the Mets this weekend. Wouldn't be crazy to like predict that Ace wants to go to the Nets and is hoping that Brooklyn either trades up or that he falls all the way to 8.
Well,
But
let's talk about it. What would Brooklyn take for them to trade up to 3? What would you want from Brooklyn?
I don't think they're going to trade up to 3. I think it would be more like if he's at 5 or 6, he would just trade up a couple
Okay, well,
spots.
yeah, that's easier to do because, like,
Yeah,
if you're thinking about it, like the Sixers going all the way down to 8, you pretty much want all 3 out of 4 of their picks in this draft, right? First round picks in this draft. You're gonna want your own 2027 pick back, right?
yeah,
And then you're probably gonna want at least 2 or 3 other picks, right?
yeah, yeah. It depends on what those picks are, but
Or maybe they take on Paul George and you get Cam Johnson.
yeah, something like that wouldn't be too bad. I don't think Brooklyn's going to trade up that far. It might just be too big of a jump, but yeah. As far as Ace, I've been kind of skeptical the whole time. I'm totally comfortable with them passing on him at 3, but I don't think it's like just a no-go at this point. I really feel like there's still a pretty real chance that Ace is the pick at 3. I'm really like, honestly, with kind of how that reporting around Daryl is framed and some of the other, like, it's kind of feeling 50-50 for me. Like, I still think there's a good chance that Daryl sees Ace as this just major talent with a
So
huge
what
ceiling.
happens if the Sixers draft him? Because this could be like a whole Eli Manning thing. I could see it happening. Look, his agent clearly doesn't know what he's doing. Couldn't get his own son into the NBA. No shade to Sharif, right? And the agent's going to try something out of left field. He's already done something out. When was the last time you heard an agent, a player confirming a first, he didn't want to do any workouts. Then he saw that VJ Edgecombe did the workout, so he wanted to do the workout, and then he backed out on the workout because they didn't guarantee him the spot. Like, come on.
Yeah, I don't think he will go that far. Obviously he doesn't maybe want to go to Philly. I think that's a fair
And do
statement.
you want a player that doesn't want to come here?
I mean, look, Jared McKay didn't work out for Philly. Maxey didn't work out for Philly.
Different. First off, Maxey was a COVID draft. We can't really count that. But, you could not work out for a team and still go there and it'd be fine because you might just not have thought that was an option, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why you didn't work out. But, he knows Philly's an option. He does not want to come here unless he has the guarantee that he's going to be the pick, which brings the question to me, okay, let's say he would have gotten that guarantee.
I think there's a difference between trying to maneuver your way to Brooklyn and then being I just outright don't want to be in Philadelphia at all, and I'm gonna hold out of my rookie contract. I don't think he has the leverage or really the desire to do that. Philly is still on the East Coast. It's a good team. It's a good situation for him objectively. I think if Philly picks him, he's gonna show up. I don't really have any concerns about that.
I just feel like we already got one goofy guy on the roster in Joel. I don't know if I want another one.
I don't know. As much as I've been a pessimist with regards to Ace, I think he's a good talent, and I think
I'm not saying that he's not a good talent, but the intangibles matter here when you have a top 5 pick.
Seems like a good kid. Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, I wouldn't pick him but it's not because of the workout. Those are basketball issues. I'm really not that concerned with this stuff. If he doesn't want to work out in Philly and he wants to try to get to Brooklyn, that's his right. That's fine by me. I'm not necessarily agreeing with the process or whether I think it is helpful or beneficial to him, but that is what it is. But I don't think it's some indictment on him as a person or any reason to think that he won't come to Philly and try hard. Because speaking of the bag, you make more money at 3, and you're not going to get a good second contract if you go to Philly and pout for 4 years. So I don't think that's a huge concern.
Well, we'll see. But let's go ahead and switch up to free agency now.
Let's do it. All right, Lucas. So the reporting around Quentin Grimes and Guerschon Yabusele is starting to pick up a little bit. Jake Fisher of the Steinline said that, quote, multiple NBA number crunchers believe that Quentin Grimes will make north of the $14.1 million mid-level exception. Obviously, Philly has bird rights and restricted free agency rights, so they can match any offer sheet he receives elsewhere. But this seems like a clear indication that he's going to make a good amount of money. He also noted that Philly is in position to pay more than the $7 to $9 million annually that Dallas was prepared to give Grimes, and that contract obviously didn't work out. But there's a gap between 9 and 14, 15, 16, wherever this number ends up. So how are you feeling about this? Do you think that this kind of jeopardizes Philly's chances of re-signing Grimes at all? What's your temperature there?
So I said last episode, I do think that when it comes down to the draft, I think, if we go VJ Edgecombe, that does make losing Grimes maybe a little bit more palatable than if we want Ace Bailey. Like I said, I prefer Edgecombe at this point. I will say this. We've been talking about this since mid-season, since pretty much, Grimes started to bust out, right? We didn't think he was worth the mid-level exception. We thought he was going to be somewhere between 15 and 20 million, right? So this doesn't change my perception at all in terms of his value. We already established what we thought his value was, and this sounds just about right? We are also talked about how there's only 2 teams with actual cap space here. The Detroit Pistons, a team that he's already been on. Maybe there's a reunion, maybe not. They have a pretty solid, at least 2-man guard rotation. If they keep Dennis Schroeder, that's 3. And let's say Marcus Sasser works out. That's 4. They don't need him, right? I know you're a Sasser fan, so I think you're a Sasser fan, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's not better than Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
But
But
yeah.
so, and then you got to worry about is the Nets, right? Who we just talked about. They have a blank canvas. Quentin Grimes could go in there, continue putting up big numbers. Sean Marks is not shy about when you're rebuilding, which is what they're doing, about signing, restricted free agents to big contracts. So could he overinflate the contract to the point where the Sixers say no thanks? Absolutely. Honestly, we've said this before. If it's north of 20 million, you say good luck, Chuck. Right? Like that's kind of where we're at, and that was a good movie, by the way. At least I thought so. Did you see it? Not the point. Anyway.
No.
So yeah, no, I think 20 million's your max for Grimes. I think we both agree on that. And if you can't keep it, guess what? You have money to go to the next guy that we're going to talk about, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's like it depends obviously on how other factors play out. Like they have several player options that seem likely to be picked up at this point. There's the second apron that the front office will need to deal with, but I'm generally pretty confident that they're going to re-sign Grimes. That has been the narrative pushed all off season. So I'm not too worried about this. I think it's fair for him to make more than $14 million.
Yeah.
Based on what he's showing.
Yeah. More than fair.
Yeah. But the other guy you mentioned is Guerschon Yabusele. The quote from Mark Stein is that it will be, quote, increasingly challenging to re-sign Guerschon at this point. The expectation is that Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond, and Eric Gordon all activate their player options. So, I mean, Guerschon is going to have a market. He said he wants to stay in the NBA. He has said time and time again that he loves Philly and that he would welcome a return, but he also has said that he wants to explore his market and he's going to try to get, he's going to get that bag. So, if you're paying $14 million plus on Quentin Grimes, is it safe to say, Lucas, that Yabu is basically out the door? Do you see any pathway to keeping him at this point?
No. I think Yabu's gone. Look, we talked about it. Yabu's a good rotation player. He's not a starter. He's a he's a gadget that you can use off the bench, right? That can punish certain matchups, but we know that he is limited. And you only get so much from him. And look, shout out to him for revitalizing his NBA career. Absolutely. And you know what? I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Yabu. But at the end of the day, we signed him to a 1-year contract. We knew if he did well, it was gonna be hard for the Sixers to sign him back to begin with. This is just what's happening. This is why it's really important to be able to hit on the margins like they were this time. Maybe they go for another busted first round pick that plays power forward. Maybe I don't think we're gonna be signing Dragon Bender, for example, but who knows?
I've seen some Hazonia hype
Mario
lately.
Hazonia. I'd rather Bender than Hazonia, to be honest.
He's playing well in Europe.
Yeah, but you get my point. Like, maybe this is just, Morey finds a way to find gems in a pile of coal. So like, look.
Yeah.
This was just one of those examples. I would love to have him back, but let's be real, outside of the maybe a minimum contract or maybe even the tax the $5 million exception, whatever that is. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. But like, unless it's something like that, bye Yabu, and I don't know who's gonna sign him. Could be like the Lakers. It could. I don't think that's a great fit for him, honestly, because I don't see his game going with LeBron's very well. But like, you get what I'm saying. He's gonna go to a team where he's either gonna thrive or he's gonna like go back to irrelevance. But
yeah,
it was fun to have him while he was here.
I tend to agree. I think he's gone. It's unfortunate. I really liked him, like you, like most Sixers fans. I thought it was like a real joy to watch him this season. He was one of the very few bright spots. This was pretty miserable all around as far as the Sixers were concerned this season. So watching Yabu kind of break out and have this moment was really nice. And he really embraced the city too. Like he went to all the football games, the soccer games. He was like a really avid kind of avatar for the team. So it'll suck losing him, especially if he goes to another contender in the East, which is possible, but he's earned it. I wish him all the best, but I'm pretty skeptical at this point that he's going to stick around. So, yeah. You ready to talk about some more draft stuff, Lucas?
I mean, I'm just surprised. I'm just happy to hear that Kelly's exercising his option because
Yeah.
if he wasn't, then I'd be wary about keeping him too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's really good news for Philly. I think it's kind of an indicator of where the market's at, where it's just kind of down across the league right now
He
with
should
the
have
new
early
CBA.
bird rights after this season too. After next season, he should have early bird rights, which should help us retain him long term. What is he,
Yeah.
28, 29? So that's actually perfect. Anyway, sorry. We can move
No,
on now.
no, yeah, I agree. Kelly was one of the few bright spots as well. And just playing hard this season was took a lot of guts. Not a lot of guys played to their full capacity after things went south, so he deserves a lot of credit. All right, Jeff stuff. Lucas, we got some Nuggets to talk about. We'll start with the Sixers.
But not the Denver Nuggets.
Not the Denver Nuggets. According to the Stein line, the Sixers' most likely outcome right now, at least as it's viewed as things currently sit, is that they will stay at number 3 and pick someone there. But there are ongoing conversations with the Spurs. Granted, all the reporting around San Antonio is that they are extremely unlikely to move that pick. But Daryl is still picking up the phone and placing the phone call. So, do you see any, what, like 1 to 10, what are the odds that Philly can move up? Do you think it's at all realistic at this point? Do you
I
think
think
San
it's probably a
Antonio?
2. I think it's a 2.
Yeah,
Look, I'm not
I
going to
think
completely rule it out, but if we do, it's probably going to have to be an overpay.
I agree. I think 1 or 2 is the number. I think staying at 2
3
and
is.
picking Harper is the smart move for San Antonio. I
Well,
understand why
yeah.
they might second guess things. Like, it is a complicated fit, but it's
Well,
just such a good prospect.
like I said last episode, it would be interesting if they do go for a Kevin Durant trade. Technically, depending on when they execute it, De'Aaron Fox could be a part of that trade if they really believe in Dylan Harper. That's a lot to ride on a guy though that you haven't seen play though. But like,
Yeah,
there is a way to do that, but probably not consistently. Look, the Sixers stay at 3. They're not trading. They're not going to be able to trade up. They're definitely not trading. Well, I'm not going to say definitely, but it
I
just
don't
seems
know.
unlikely.
Yeah,
Like they trade down. So yeah, look, it's 3 or nothing at this point, unless Morey takes a veer left.
yeah. I don't think it's 3 or nothing quite. There's still plenty of reporting that they were listening to offers to trade down. I'm not going to rule that out either. They have like interviewed Con Knipple if they move down like 2 spots to Utah at 5 or whatever. That kind of thing could still make sense for
I thought
them.
you said he was a Utah guy. I thought you said Colin was a Utah guy.
He is, but I will accept him in Philadelphia with open
Okay,
arms.
okay.
But yeah, I generally think Harper at 2 to the Spurs and Edgecombe or Bailey to the Sixers at 3 is what I would expect. Those are the most likely outcomes in my view.
Mm-hmm.
Another report from the Steinline, Lucas, this is going outside of Philadelphia over to Brooklyn, is that there has been, quote, consistent buzz around the Nets selecting Yegor Demin, the Russian 6'9" point guard from BYU, at number 8. This is a guy who has a lot of mixed feelings in draft circles. I think he's a pretty polarizing prospect. He is number 37 on my board. I would not advocate for Brooklyn making this move. I think it is frankly would be a pretty egregious misstep. But what are your thoughts on this?
So you just bought out a 6'10" point guard that can't shoot and now you're going to draft a 6'9" point guard that can't shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fairness, Demon did take 5 threes a game. He is at least shooting them. It's not
He's
quite
trying to
against
shoot. He
Demon.
just can't shoot. Ben Simmons refused to shoot.
27% on 4.7 attempts per game.
That is a lot of attempts.
It's not great,
Gosh.
but he is shooting them, which does count for something.
It does count for something. I don't know if it's good or not, but at least he's trying. But like, you get my sentiment here. Like, and I get it. You go with the guy like that has the coolest tools and the highest upside. I get it. You could argue outside of the top 5 or 6 that he has the quote unquote biggest ceiling, highest ceiling, maybe with the tools and stuff. I don't believe that, but I can see a front office talking themselves into it.
Clearly they are. I mean, I don't see it. He's just not that great an athlete. Like, he's not someone who creates advantages easily as a ball handler. He's a brilliant passer, but that's really his one, like, skill to hang his hat on right now. I think the most popular comparison has been Josh Giddey, but frankly, I think Giddey's
better.
to be substantially better right now. Like, I don't know. I've seen like the Bulls, another team connected to him a lot. I think putting him and Giddey together in Chicago would be extremely funny. Like, that is the most Bulls thing they could possibly do.
But they already have a 6'8" point guard that can't shoot that well.
That's what I'm saying. That's like, it's the ultimate Bulls move. But
the Bulls need to not overthink this and just take Derek Queen. That's what they need to do. Derek Queen is a Chicago Bull. That's what they need to do.
I agree. A lot of teams should probably not overthink things and take Queen. But knowing NBA teams, they will overthink things. Yeah, Brooklyn is like, I can sort of get behind Damon if you're like putting him around good players. You have shooting and guys who can get to the rim and like a lob threat. If you put him in a good like competitive
Nick Claxton is a lob threat, but yeah, I get what you're saying. But
what I'm saying, Brooklyn, none of those guys in Brooklyn are going to last more than a couple years right now. They're pretty much a blank slate.
Well, you mean to say that Cam Thomas is not going to last? They're not going to bring him back?
If they do, that's not even a good fit. So like, I just don't. I don't like it for Brooklyn, especially. I don't like it for any team in the lottery, but Brooklyn is really one of the...
they have the 19th pick, and then they have 2 picks in the late 20s. They could use it on him there.
I don't think he's going to get there if he's getting looks at 8. So
that's crazy.
But, yeah, we'll see.
Next, we need to talk about Michael's guy, right?
Yeah, it's a shame that Michael's not here to talk about him, but Trey Johnson is doing quite well in workouts, according to Zach Lowe. I think he's really turning heads as just a crazy shot maker. Do you see any world in which Philly kind of swerves and goes with Trey Johnson at 3, Lucas, or is he like exclusively a trade down guy at this point?
I mean, they haven't brought him in for a workout, but like a guy that shoots a ridiculously high volume of threes that can't defend does seem like a Daryl Morey type of player.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so like, look, it's not impossible for them to zag at 3 and take him. I wouldn't be happy about it, but like, I could look. It's possible. I'd probably give it like a 20% chance happening, maybe 25. We're feeling feisty, but nah, probably not.
I mean, it is worth noting if he's performing really well in workouts, that those workouts have not been in Philadelphia. But you mocked him to Charlotte at 4 in our last episode. Yeah. I think that's like not an impossible outcome. I think Utah at 5, Washington at 6, New Orleans, all those teams are real candidates. I view him.
I just see him as like a more athletic Buddy Hield. That's kind of what I see him as.
Yeah, I've generally kind of viewed him as more of a late lottery guy, but he does fit what Philly needs quite well. Like, offensively, the fit is really strong. You want as much shooting around Joel as possible. He is he's the best shooter in the draft, point blank.
Is it around Joel anymore? Because I don't even feel comfortable saying that. I think it's around Maxey now. You want as much shooting as possible around Maxey.
However you want to slice it. More shooting is always good.
Well, but the thing is, as great of a fit as he is offensively, the reason why he's not the top pick is because defensively he did not do well in college. Doesn't mean that he can't do well in the NBA, but
he's got a lot of work to do on that end.
Yeah,
needs to get stronger. The offense can be sort of lopsided. He's not getting to the rim a lot. The passing is fine, but he just doesn't really.
Like I said, a more athletic Buddy Hield.
I don't think Buddy Hield is totally fair. I think he's a little bit more varied, but I don't want him to be the pick at 3.
No,
and frankly, I don't think you can trade down that far and still get him. So unless they're moving down to like 4 or 5, it's probably a risk. But Trey Johnson, I think at Charlotte, that's probably where it starts for him, and I think he might have
Charlotte to Brooklyn is his range. I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Speaking of guys whose draft range maybe ends with Brooklyn, the guys at ESPN reporting that the Hornets and Jazz are interested in Duke's Con Knippel, with his floor, quote, no lower than number 8, which again is Brooklyn. So I've mocked Con to Charlotte at 4 in my final mock that's going up tomorrow. We mocked him to Utah in this past week's episode. Seems like he could be a top 5 guy. I know you don't fully buy him as a top 5 guy, Lucas. But
I don't buy him as a top 3. Top 5 is possible, but top 3 now.
How would you feel about him in Charlotte, in Utah? Do you think that makes sense for either team?
I think it does. I think it does. You need, especially in Charlotte, you need a glue guy, right? You need a guy that can make the connecting pass, that can hit his shots. You don't need a star. You kind of already have two young stars in LaMelo and Brandon Miller. You need role players now. I think Con Knipple is a high-end role player. Maybe at best Gordon Hayward, which is not bad. He was a one-time All-Star. Multi-time really good player. And Utah. We already said he seems like a Utah guy, and I mean outside of that joke, but in all seriousness, they need depth. They need players that can actually play. They got a lot of players that can't play, right? So, their starting point guard right now is Isaiah Collier, who can't hit the broadside of the barn. Now, granted, he is a fantastic playmaker. I love his playmaking, but needs to get better as a shooter, obviously.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Charlotte just taking a good player who's just kind of a solid lock to produce is something they haven't done enough of. I think he fits well with LaMelo and Brandon Miller. Utah for pretty much the same reasons. That offense really suits him. I could see the case for Utah maybe taking a swing on a quote unquote higher upside guy or whatever, but Connor's going to come in and produce, and I do think there is some underrated upside there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 5 pick at this point. In fact, it might be the most likely outcome with how things are shaping up here. All right, Lucas, you want to go around the NBA?
Sure.
I figure we start with Game 7 predictions. We kind of hinted at it. You
none.
said you didn't want to make one, but
I don't want to make one. I can't.
You're going to. I'm making you right now.
You're making me?
On camera.
On camera. I will say that I am rooting for the Pacers. I will not make a prediction, but I will say I am rooting for the Pacers.
Just make a prediction, Lucas. It's not that hard.
I think the Pacers have a team of destiny thing. I think it's the Pacers.
Okay. And I'll make sure to clip that for when they lose. No, I'm torn just like you. I think my head says OKC and my heart says Indiana. I think that's where I'm at.
I listen to my heart. Are you going to listen to your heart, or are you going to listen to your head?
I mean, Halliburton's hurt. They're on the road. OKC is a really good home
environment. He barely
environment.
looked hurt in Game 6.
But, I mean, look, Indiana has, answered the call with their backs against the wall every time this postseason. I mean, they haven't really been in this situation yet, where it's win or go home. They've mostly been kind of front-running.
Have the Thunder. The Thunder had a chance to win it.
OKC was down in Denver, and they went to Game 7. They came back against Denver. They won a Game 7 against Denver. OKC has been in this spot.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know, team of destiny thing. Like I said, I'm listening to my heart, because my head probably would say the Thunder as well. And for other reasons you pointed, but like I said, it's my heart here. It's the Pacers. So are you going to go with your team, or are you going to abandon them in their time?
We've kind of flip-flopped. I know we both said Pacers in 7 before Game 6. Or was it before
Game 5?
I'll just stick with that. I'll ride with what I put on the record.
Okay.
So
all right.
Pacers in 7. That's our official prediction. Anything else you want to talk about, Lucas?
Man, can we talk about the sale of the Los Angeles Lakers? Because that was mind-blowing. I thought it was... I did not believe it. Because we found out directly after the end of our recording for... No, was it at the end of it? Was it after we finished recording or during the recording?
We talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, let's just talk about this from the aspect of expansion. If expansion wasn't going to happen before, it's definitely happening now. So let me just ask you.
I think it's been like that. I think it was always going to happen.
So my question is, in an expansion draft, who would you protect?
How many do you get to protect?
You get 8.
You get 8?
Yeah, you protect 8.
I mean, it would be Joel, Paul George. Well,
let's think about it.
I think you do Joel, Paul George, Tyrese, Jared, Max, Jared, Quentin, Justin Edwards, and whoever the pick is this year. Is that 8? I think that's 8, right?
So you would, if you got to get out of jail free card for Joel or Paul George's contract, you're telling me that you wouldn't take it?
I think you're trying to win. I think you're still going for it.
Okay. I think it depends on Joel's knee, right? Because if you don't protect him, you could get out of that contract.
I mean, you could argue that no team is going to pick up Paul George, so you just kind of risk it anyways and protect a different young guy. But I don't know.
Bona,
it's like,
you want to protect?
Is Bona really worth protecting? I don't know.
And I mean, look, this new franchise might just need a name to help sell tickets.
It's true.
I would say this. I think if the Sixers didn't protect Joel, and then he got picked up by feet, I think that would be a betrayal.
Here's the thing: is this isn't going to happen next summer or anything?
No, it's probably
going to be a few years down the road at the earliest. So this is really, these contracts won't really be a factor at that point.
That's fair.
So it'll be kind of a different conversation. But if it was happening right now, I think you would still protect the big guys and just see if it can work for one season, even though it probably won't. Feels futile, but you just got to try at this point. I don't know what else you'd do.
Blow it up.
I think if different conversation, but I think if Philly doesn't do well this upcoming season, then we get into blow it up territory.
Well, I mean, what does blow it up look like? Is it just firing the GM or head coach, or do you try to actively shop Paul George and Joel Embiid, knowing that they're sunk assets at this point?
I don't know. I guess we'll find out, but
maybe hopefully we won't find out.
Yeah, ideally, but at this point, my faith has been crushed, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully, VJ Edgecombe will save us.
Maybe.
All right, Lucas, you ready to wrap things up here?
Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap things up.
All right. As always, everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Sixer Sense podcast. Please like, subscribe, follow along if you can. We are on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Sixer Sense. You can follow me at Kline NBA. You can follow Lucas at CoachJ_20. You can follow Michael, even though he's not here today, at The Real Mike KB. And we will be back soon to talk more Sixers. It will be draft week, so we'll have plenty to discuss. And until then, go Sixers. Peace out. We'll talk soon.
Adios.